Liza did that is so powerful is she didn't tell you how to do it. She just told you what needed to be done, and then she left it there with you. And she allowed you to either initiate something or not, right? And so it's tricky because, yes, it's easy when we see somebody not initiating whatsoever. And then we want to scan and see, and it sounds like, you were in your process of this, right? And which can also be interesting, because if you're kind of in this middle space of your own consciousness, that clearly there is some, inner child stuff that needs to be healed. And, you're even in the world kind of with your belief that I've done it, I've stopped drinking, I'm good here, but not really evaluating whatever she might be experiencing. And so what I love is the simplicity of, I don't need to tell you how to do this or to do it at all. I just need to tell you what needs to be done. Here's my standard. And the boundary is really with herself. Here's my standard, and this is what I need. And then you either initiate or not. And even if that's a tumultuous road, I always want to look for that in people. It's like, okay, are you making effort? To me, if there's effort, genuine effort, even if it's not perfect, it's not going to be a straight line, that's for sure. But is that effort happening where you understand what I need here?
Most relationships don't fall apart because of the alcohol, addiction, or even bad behavior. They fall apart because two people are no longer aligned in values, in integrity, or their willingness to grow together. Hello everybody, my name is Lee Davy. I am not an alcoholic. I refuse to be anonymous. I am someone who lives a self-led life, alcohol-free as fuck, and I spend every waking moment of that life helping other people feel the same, like right now. Today you're in for a treat. I am joined by Casey Stevens. Casey is a licensed psychotherapist, a master certified consciousness coach, and a certified clinical hypnotherapist. She has spent over a decade working with thousands of clients around the world. Casey blends behavioral science, clinical psychotherapy, quantum physics, and ancient energy practices with a seriously sharp, intuitive gift, guiding people into real somatic embodied healing, not just the simple mindset tweaks. This conversation is for you if you've ever looked at your partner and thought, I'm changing and they're doing naff all. Can this relationship actually survive? Maybe you've stopped drinking, they're still on the sofa with a bottle every night watching a football. Maybe you're doing the inner work while they numb out with alcohol, works, games, or screens. Maybe you feel torn between loving them and resenting the hell out of them. Well, with Casey, we dive into what it really takes to navigate that gap without abandoning yourself or trying to drag someone where they don't want to go. Here are some of the big themes that we get into today. We're going to talk about the difference between inviting your partner into growth and dragging them there. Why dignity of their own process is essential, even when you're terrified of losing them. How over-functioning, fixing, and rescuing quietly destroy trust and emotional safety. Nervous system regulation. Why your state determines whether you can repair or just react. What to do when your partner's coping strategy, like drinking alcohol, blocks intimacy, connection, and respect, and how to recognize when you've genuinely misaligned in values versus when someone is actually willing but wounded. This one gets right to the core of love, safety, and self-respect in relationships. So buckle up. We're going to go on a hell of a ride. So without further ado, I'm going to shut the hell up and leave you in the capable hands of the beautiful, the amazing, the very intelligent, the very wise and intuitive Casey Stevens.
Hi, Lee.
Hey, Casey. How's life?
It's pretty good. How about you? It's good to see you.
Yeah, very good. Very good. I like the bookshelf. What? Just have a look. I look. Your books are color coordinated.
Yeah.
My wife color coordinated my books. She gets very angry when I move one out of place.
That's funny. Yeah. There's something just very aesthetically pleasing when you have a lot of books, and then, if I could, this whole wall is covered and I've got them all colored, and it just, I don't know, it makes me feel good. So
what's the one book I don't know, this hard question, but if you had to gift a book to somebody, non-fiction, what would be the book that you would gift and why?
Good question. I would say that, oh my gosh, I have so many books and so many that I really like. I would say I really love, which may kind of pertain to your work, anything Gabor Mate. I think he's really brilliant. And so, any of his stuff in the realm of Hungry Ghost is one that kind of Have you read his work? Do you like him?
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I've read it. He's not like, he hasn't touched me like a lot of other people have, but definitely read his work and really admired what he's done.
Who
How
would,
do you, go on,
who would you,
sorry.
yeah, who would you say? Because I want to know.
Who would I say? Oh,
It's
if
a
I,
hard question.
yeah. I mean, hmm, it's really interesting because different authors have touched my life at different times.
Yeah, right,
And
right.
and
Yeah,
different books that were like life changing to me, I probably wouldn't even recommend them to somebody today because
right.
I think certain books and certain authors they're meant to meet you at certain milestones on your journey. So a
Yeah.
great example would be when I actually stopped smoking years
Mm.
ago from reading a book, Alan Carr's Easy Way to Stop Smoking Permanently. And I
Uh-huh.
think that was the first time when I realized, oh, wow, books have the power to change your life. And then the next book that I read, it was gifted to me, was The Success Principles by Jack Canfield.
Uh-huh.
And it was actually the book that I would say led to me leaving. So I had a 19-year railway career at the time, and I left because in the beginning of his book, he said, you can be whoever you want to be, do whatever you want to do. The only person who's going to get in your own way is you.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay. So I quit my job. So that book was really profound to me, but I wouldn't recommend that book. Not that there's nothing wrong with it, Jack, if you're listening. But I've actually interviewed him on this podcast.
Oh, wow.
But you just come across different books. I think the most profound one for me at the moment is that I give to people is probably the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership.
Mm. Mhm.
So that's the one that I give to a lot of people because it's a good framework for people. I come across a lot of rational, logical people, so the framework really helps them. So I would say that one. How do you heal people? Because you are a healer. What would you say your shtick, like your superpowers are when it comes to healing?
Well, I would say a couple of things. I think for me, it really is my intuition is, one of my greatest assets that I've kind of had to develop that relationship with my own kind of inner knowing and my own, deep relationship with myself, which I think ultimately leads to our relationship with our intuition. And so my kind of personal superpowers and my magic around that are that I am so kinesthetic that I end up feeling. It's like when I meet with somebody, I get a download or an imprint in my whole body of their experience. And past, present, future, so much of that kind of lands inside of me in a way that it feels I'm aware now. I can discern what's mine and what's not mine. And so sometimes it would be confusing because I would feel something hours or days before I was meeting with somebody when we kind of make that connection, and I wouldn't know. It was like my life would feel like, what's going on here? This is off. And now I just can usually discern the difference between. There's occasions where it still can be confusing, but typically, your own energy so well and your own presence and then the ability, right, to tap into somebody else. And sometimes I won't know who it is necessarily because, you're meeting with lots of people, but I'll just get these downloads and these imprints. And so then when I'm working with somebody and the relationship builds and the energy builds over time, it's just honestly a phenomenal tool because there's so many ways that we're not conscious to ourselves. And so when I can carry this gift, right, that it's not, I just utilize it in addition to the other things that I use, but I think it helps to guide people where they might be stuck. I think it lands in people when I do utilize it and reflect something back to them, mirror something that I'm seeing or feeling, or when they're stuck. I don't want to overutilize it. Obviously, it's, we all heal ourselves. Nobody heals us. But I can create this container that people can just receive that in a way that they, deeply know that it's true. And that really I'm just kind of offering this extra, guidance and reflection as a source to help them see themselves more clearly and get over humps that they might not have consciously seen or been available. So that I would say is kind of like my superpower. And that helps me when things, just to kind of, even in any session or any that I'm meeting with somebody, it's just, how do we guide this? I never prepare for anything. I never plan anything. There's no, routine or structure to my work whatsoever. I just show up and I allow the energy to kind of develop, and whatever is going on with somebody else, I just become really present to that. And then it always turns into some, beautiful thing. And sometimes those are more profound, radical transformations, and sometimes they're littler, but they build on one another. And so that, I would say, is really my superpower, personally, and how I just walk and move in the world, that I've developed a deep relationship with myself, which allows me to offer that kind of as a bonus to other people. And then I would honestly just say how you meet with anyone, like your presence, your own unique blueprint. It's not going to be for everybody. I'm not going to be for everybody. The way I practice is certainly not the only way to do it. And it maybe isn't even the best way to do it, but it is really true for me. And the people that it resonates with, I think people really feel the sincerity in it, and they really feel the presence, and they really feel just the way that I am. So the way I move in the world is I'm just so deeply invested, right? And so if that's what you're looking for, then, I think people feel that. And it's less about any of the clinical training or, things that I've studied, or different, paradigms that you can dial in, and trainings and all of those things. I think that quality is really what mixes with anyone and ends up becoming this therapeutic relationship. It's the rapport that you build. But more than that, I think, what does anybody make you feel? So I'm always curious about that. It's less about them, but what does that person evoke inside of you? And, there happen to be, many people that hopefully I evoke this spirit and this quality of healing. And I think it works pretty well. And again, the people that it resonates with, it works. So, yeah.
Cool. Thank you for that. Why did you go into healing? I imagine you could have done many things with your life.
Oh, yeah. Well, I didn't start out this way. So I kind of had, I call it my former life. It sounds like you've had a former life as well. So my former life, I was married, and ultimately I went into this work because my first husband really struggled with depression and a lot of pretty severe mental health issues that, he was really wonderful until he, had some pretty deep struggles. And so really I got into it initially, and I had a totally different career. I worked in like interior design and this creative field, and just completely different. And ultimately, when he started to really struggle, as if you understand systems theories and just how interconnected we all are, his struggle became my struggle. If he's not well, then I'm not really well. And so and I also learned at that time just my orientation, because life had really been very smooth until it wasn't. And he was having all of these struggles and not necessarily seeking help or change or transformation in the ways that I recognized I was. And I was probably, better capable of doing that at that time because I wasn't struggling in the way that he was. But, again, soon after, his struggling and, probably a lot of codependent patterns where I was really trying to overfunction and help him and kind of drag him to be well because I wasn't well if he wasn't well. And so, but there was, resistance on that end. And so initially I went into this work looking for help for him, which then became help for us, which then became help for me. And then ultimately, what I recognized during that time is I just had this really strong orientation to life, that when there's a problem, I really want to dig in and solve it. And this is when I was presented with this kind of awareness about myself, that this is how I moved in the world. And, I kind of am like a dog on a bone. I can't stop until I'm, moving through this and finding what the challenge is, and understanding self better and improving the system. And so that's really when I learned. And I also had to have some deep lessons around just, you can't change anybody that doesn't want to change. You can't force it. There's no willing it. And I have a pretty strong will. There's really nothing you can do. Everyone, deserves the dignity of their own process, and we have to give that to them, and we can't force it, and we can't we can love people and we can invite them to change, but we can't do it for them. And so after trying to do that for a very long time, in that relationship, and some of it's timing, some of it's, just so all of these things, I really recognized, it's making me unwell to try to, drag him along in a way that he really doesn't want to, at least at this moment, that there was all this resistance and lack of willingness, lack of, who knows what. But eventually I had to really say, okay, this is ultimately about me. This is becoming about me. I have to dive in and learn about this. So then I did that. And then I was sitting with my own therapist who had been our therapist and then just my therapist. And of course, at that time, I got married really, really young. My entire adult life was shaped by this person. My identity was really so wrapped. It was really when that no longer, was somebody, right, that I could rely on or be in relationship with, really. Which I ultimately, decided through that process, just like, okay, I've really lost any sense of relation. Like we don't have a relationship. I'm doing a lot of mothering and nursing and all of these things that I can't sustain myself because it was making me unwell. But I have to, let him have the dignity of his own process, and I just have to focus on myself. And so then after a while of doing that kind of inner work myself, I finally went in one day to my healer and I just said, I think I want to do what you do. And she just said, she said, I've just been waiting for you to say that. And so she was a deeply intuitive healer too. And she kind of had her own magic. And it was so sweet that, again, she allowed me the dignity of my own process by giving me the space to discover that in my own time. And then I often tell the story, right? She ended up being one of the people who wrote recommendation letters for me to go back to school. And that's where then I studied, psychology and really wanted to anchor in and do this in a clinical way that made sense. But I also knew I wanted to add my own magic because I had been really waking up and reconnecting with myself and my intuition at that time. So I knew I wanted to practice. Once I decided, I was like very clear what the path was and how I wanted to do it and how I wanted to work. So I went back and just did a ton. Sometimes I look back and I wonder, how did I survive that time period? And I actually, which is why I was so glad to connect, because I know your whole work is really around addiction. I did 3 years of my clinical work, getting my hours and doing all of that as I was kind of in my training in an inpatient facility. So I was providing therapy for people in addiction, in pretty severe addiction. And so anyway, that was kind of the foundation. It was really interesting because I didn't have a history of that myself, but I knew what an education it would be, to have to expose myself to something that I hadn't really, struggled with personally. And, it just expanded me so much to tap into that. And of course, it's not my primary work now, but I love the foundation because you can't really escape, that it's just a dynamic in life. It's a dynamic in any family system. It's a dynamic that really allows me to serve people who are struggling with that. Because I have that foundation, right, of that history with all of that. So anyway, that's a side reel about all of that, because I don't often advertise or talk about my work in addiction, but yeah, it's definitely a foundation of how I started, and yeah, and then the rest is history, right? I went into private practice, and I've been working in this way, and I think I just get more confident and more able to do all of the things over time, and here I've been doing it for 15 years now. So
well done. You said everybody is entitled to the dignity of their own journey, almost paraphrasing a little bit. And I know how difficult it is when you love somebody and you're trying to protect them and keep them safe, and you just can't, right? There's a lot of people going to be listening to this who they are in relationship with people who drink a lot, and because of that, their relationship is not really as deep as they would like it to be.
Right.
And they feel pretty powerless, right? Like, looking back at your experience, what words of wisdom or help or guidance could you give to somebody who is at home right now and they do feel this eagerness to change somebody that they love? And we know that that's going to be very difficult. What words of wisdom could you give them?
I mean, I would really say, invite people, welcome them, show them the path, let them know that you love them, let them know that you want them to come with you as you are healing and progressing. But ultimately, you have to, which is the hardest thing in the world. I know it's easier said than done, but to detach from the outcome as much as possible. I think when we limit ourselves because we've decided we need a particular outcome, you know this, of course, but we disallow the process to really unfold in the way that it wants to or needs to, because we're asserting our will onto others, onto the relationship, which actually just adds more pressure. So when we can let in, and I know it's hard, but when we can really let in all possibilities, and that's just even to entertain, maybe this won't change. Maybe they won't ever stop drinking. Maybe it will kill them. Maybe the relationship will end. We have to let in the things that we can't even fathom are possible. We have to let in those possibilities, I think, so that we can continue and we're not so overly attached to one particular outcome. Of course, we know that that's what we prefer. And so we love them, we welcome them, but we can't force them. And I think eliminating that kind of subliminal, it's like a subliminal pressure that we're adding. Maybe it's very overt, maybe it's covert, maybe it's indirect, maybe it's invisible, maybe it's not so invisible, who knows, but I think we have to let in all possibilities, that really we have to decide, what's my path? What do I know is true for me? What do I want for myself? It may be, if you're in a relationship with someone who's struggling with substance of any kind, right? It sounds like you specialize specifically with alcohol, but there's so many ways. It's just a compensatory strategy, and that relationship that they have with that substance, whatever it may be, and it could be, let's just allow in any of the compensatory. So it could be workaholism, it could be anything, right, that we are using to cope, right? Because, and this is what I love about Gabor Mate, right, is he really kind of discusses this so truly. It's like the addiction, the alcohol isn't the problem, it's the solution to the problem, right? And so it's really understanding that if that's the way that they have decided, though, to solve a problem, there's nothing that we can do to change that. They have to evaluate that relationship themselves, but we can get really clear about what our solution to our problem in our own way would be. And so I would just, whatever that is for you, okay, well, I'm going to decide that I'm going to focus on my own well-being, whatever that is that I need to transform, that's put me in a place that would have me in proximity to somebody who would have a substance, abuse issue. And what do I need to evaluate and heal? And that's going to be my focus. Or why am I enabling, or why am I overfunctioning, or why am I overly attached, or what is it in me that's just allowing me to be really free here? And then focus on that and invite them consistently along. Hey, here's where I am. Here's where I'd like you to be with me. And really, we just focus, and not in a selfish way either. It's not that we just, okay, hey, I'm going to leave you. I don't care about what you're going through, but we can't ultimately change it. And I think when we can find a new focus, rather than our focus being them or our focus being their addiction, it's my focus is whatever I've deemed it to be that's separate from you. And I'm just going to invite you along the way. And I hope that you come and you're welcome. And I'd love nothing more than to be over here with you. And maybe it works and maybe it doesn't. Whatever you need to do is okay for you. And so there's always that invitation, I think. There's always that investment. Hey, I'll do whatever it takes. But we don't want to get stuck. What so often happens when we're on the other end of that, meaning that we're the partner to somebody who's struggling, is we go into overfunctioning. We go into, that enabling, overfunctioning role that disallows progress to really happen, because it adds undue pressure that, again, takes us away from the dignity of somebody's own process. And so they have to have that investment. They have to have that will. They have to have that drive, that momentum, whatever that takes for them to want to improve and move through it. And then if we're loving them and encouraging them and not overly attached to their outcome, then then I think the chances of getting there are so much greater. And there's also the chance that we have to let in that we can't change it, right? We can't, it may not work. They may not want to change. And so we may outgrow the relationship. And I think our greatest struggle is our over attachment to the relationship. I need this to work. And it's really when we can let go of that attachment of our need that I think more progress is possible. What do you think?
Well, you just reminded me. I remember in my first marriage, I remember thinking that she had a real problem with alcohol, and that if I stopped, she may stop, or I could get some sense of control back in the relationship. But I didn't think that I had a problem as much per se. So I was like trying to blame her. And then I stopped, and then I judged her so hard. Like I found it so difficult to be in a relationship with someone who didn't drink suddenly. And we divorced. And I remember flying to Vienna, and I was reading, I think it was one of Don Miguel Ruiz's books. And he said, if you buy a dog, if you want a dog, don't get a cat, basically he was saying, or something like that. And I realized in that moment that the pressure I was putting on my ex-wife to be something that I wanted her to be, and not accepting her for who she was, and how demoralizing emotionally, spiritually, biologically, physically that must have been for her to love me and to feel my love at one moment unconditional, and then all of a sudden that love be conditional. And I broke down a little bit on that plane. I remember crying my eyes out on the plane and that makes me realize like how many people out there actually realize the pain that they can introduce on someone's life by really wanting them to change and kind of going about it in, how can you say this? Probably like I would say, and this is me, like as an amateur, not a pro, right? That's what it felt like to me. Like, I'm not saying I'm a pro now, but I definitely was an amateur back then. Like I was clueless, so that's one thing I was thinking of. And the other thing that came up for me was a quote I read on a wall in a pub yesterday, funny enough. And it was a Dylan Thomas quote, and it was, inside all of us is a beast, an angel, and a madman. And I was like, wow, yeah, because I have to love my beast, my angel, my madman, but I also have to recognize with my wife that she also has a beast, an angel, and a madman, or a mad person. And I can't just love the angel. Like I need to find a way to hold space for and accept the mad person and the beast, and so that came up for me when I was talking to you as well, when you was sharing your advice then.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. It's so true. And I think before we really get conscious of all of these parts and these layers and the shadow and shadow material, it's our capacity to really love completely. If we can't love those parts in ourselves, and we can't really meet them or greet those parts in ourselves, if we haven't consciously done so, then probably we're not doing that. And we haven't spent the time to really invest in that healing of our own inner self, then it's really easy to not completely love the wholeness and the totality and the spectrum, because we're all capable of all things, right? And so it's easy to judge to a point, someone else is failing because it's not my particular failing, but I'm really not exploring or welcoming or developing a relationship with my own failing. I'm just judging your particular brand of that. Because I can have disdain, and, that can get into so many other layers of what that is, but really doing our own inner work, which is really the invitation that I would say I would offer anyone who's struggling in a partnership, which is so hard, right? Because it does affect the whole system. When somebody's struggling, it absolutely drags the whole system down. And I think to decide, hey, I'm just going to do my own inner work here. And if that inspires you, if that evokes something in you, if that does something that allows the entire system to come up, and you as an individual to do that in your own way, whatever way that's true for you, then beautiful. But that's really the only power I have, is to do my own work. And not in a way that I'm leaving you behind, or I'm abandoning you in your struggle, but in a way that I just know how powerful focusing on my own stuff, because I wouldn't be here if I wasn't a match in some way for this. Subconsciously, subliminally, whatever that may be, there is a match and a reason that we came together. I really believe that. And there's so many patterns and dynamics in me. And so who am I, right, to just judge you and what your struggle is? That opens that in and of itself, right, reveals something that I can work on. And so that's, I think, what we must do if we really want to get free from it. And the truth is if we devote ourselves to that path, to our own healing, our own inner work, and discovering whatever that will be, like, we can't go wrong. We're not going to miss the target. We may not end up with this person. We may not end up, freeing we may not free them from their own struggle, but we will free ourselves. And that is certain. Yeah.
Yeah. What came up for me then was safety. It's almost like, so if anyone's listening to this, if you have somebody in your, relationship that is struggling, the one that comes up all the time in our community is lots of women, they stop drinking and they start to move through the video games of life and consciousness, and their partner's just sat in a chair drinking every night, and they can't really connect with them, right? And it's like, what do? I really wish he would stop drinking. But what I'm hearing Casey say here, and it's coming up for me, is safety. It's like, you have to make sure that you're safe, right? Again, spiritually, psychologically, physically. Are you safe from what's going on in your household? Do you have kids? Are they safe? So there's I think the focus is you work on your safety, you work on your children's safety. And then while you're doing that, you're almost like filling up your cup. And then when you fill your cup, you can then give from the overflow, versus what sounds like happened to you in the beginning, which you probably, your cup was depleted a little bit, and you was trying to give from this depleted cup. And that was causing more stress on your nervous system and your shared co-regulated nervous system. So I really like that. Well, the download that's coming up for me anyway is like, focus on your own safety, build yourself up, and then you might be able to help out, or just be able to just take it, right? Like, have a container big enough to handle whatever's going on with your partner in your relationship. That's not going to just happen like that.
Right. Yeah. We have to hone, and you're exactly right. Yeah. I was more than depleted, and I was really trying to, rescue someone that didn't want to be rescued. Right. And so you can imagine how the life force goes about as low as it can go. And eventually, for me, I had to decide that, because my own survival really got so depleted that I think it's something that, then when we nurture that safety in ourselves and in our environment, then we can ask ourselves the question, how much can I endure and tolerate? Because now I am more resourced. And again, as long as there's actual safety, there's no, danger to you or your kids, right? Then how long can I be patient and tolerate this? And I think, again, intuitively, we'll all just reach a threshold if we can create that safety within ourselves. And so I'm so glad that you kind of bring that up, because the nervous system and our own, ability to really regulate within that, if we're not tending to that, and by the way, we can't really do any of this consciousness work if our nervous system, which of course I know, but we meet the world through the state that we're in. And so if we're not in a regulated state, then we can't do any of this work that I think is the most fascinating and the most, interesting, which is real self-discovery, really to be able to witness ourselves. We can't do that at all when we're not resourced or regulated, because we're going to see the world in a survival state. And so no extra consciousness, we can't take it on, because we're not meeting the world in a way that we're even receptive to it. And so we have to get ourselves at a baseline, right? Really safe, really regulated, in such a way that we can now start taking on even more within ourselves. And then we can, again, decide, how much tolerance do I have for this? If this person is still over here dysregulated and not attempting to make any effort to improve, how long can I tolerate that? If I'm moving in this direction, and so then the disparity between our two states just become greater, and in such a way that we're not even judging where they are. We just build a deep inner knowing about how much we can tolerate and how long. And then I think we just reach a threshold that if that's not happening, if they're not coming alongside us, then it just becomes something that it's not even a judgment. It's so beautiful when we can do it in this way, because we can really see, I'm not judging you whatsoever. I can allow you to have the dignity of your own process. But the truth is, for me, that this is not a frequency match anymore. And it would compromise my ability to stay in the container with you if I'm not acknowledging what I know inside myself. And so then the disparity becomes so great that it's not a judgment, but it really is a mechanism of our own ability to survive in a container or not, or preserve this version of ourself that not only is just regulated in our state, but more than that, it's able to tap into this higher level of consciousness and progress and transformation and growth and evolution, right, that we are experiencing. And it will stifle us at a certain point if we stay in a container with somebody who's not participating. And so we just grow intolerant of it, not in a judgmental way, but in a way that it's just simply, there's no resonance any longer.
If you're listening to this and you're thinking, this is me, I'm doing all the work, I'm changing, I'm evolving, doing all this personal growth work, and my partner's doing nothing. You don't have to navigate that space alone. You've got two options right now. If you want help understanding your parts, strengthening your boundaries, and learning how to stay in self and to communicate from that space while your partner is struggling, then reach out to me directly at thestridemethod@gmail.com, and we can talk about how I can coach you around that. Or if you feel called to connect with Casey, her work is powerful, intuitive, and deeply somatic. You can find her on Instagram at shrinkbigger. Okay, we both offer one-to-one coaching. Whichever path feels right for you, you'll get the support you need to stop abandoning yourself in your relationship and start leading from truth, clarity, strength, and all importantly, self. Okay, back to Casey Stevens. I'm going to simplify it here, but just I'm aware that this is hugely complex, but I'm going to simplify it for the sake of learning for people listening, I guess. I always say to people, I use myself as a good example. I'm going to blow my own trumpet a little bit here, Casey, if you don't mind. There was a time in my relationship with Liza, my wife, and she said to me, I want a divorce because I said, why? I don't drink. Why do you want to divorce me? And she said, I'm fed up of living with a boy. And I've said this multiple times on this podcast, but it's so interesting how these different things can show up in lots of different areas as good learning examples. So she didn't want a boy, she wanted a man. And so the way I'm going to simplify this is, imagine I just said, I don't give a fuck. I just am who I am. And if you don't like me, whatever, I ain't changing. Versus someone that goes, oh my God, you think I'm a boy? What does that look like? How are you experiencing me? And then it's like, oh, do I want to do something about this? Hell yeah, because I love this woman and I want to save this marriage. So I'm going to do everything I can in my power to switch from boy to man. And while I'm doing it, I'm screwing up all over the place. I'm upsetting her, going into rage attacks. And she keeps saying, when are you going to change? When are you going to change? When are you going to change? But she doesn't leave because she thinks, this guy is going to change. This guy is committed. I trust that he's on the same journey. It's almost like a core values thing, right? This guy wants to grow and develop as a human being, and he wants to do that for me as well as himself, versus I'm just going to sit in a chair. I'm just going to drink alcohol. I don't want to read your stupid books. I don't want to watch your stupid courses. I don't want to take stupid coaching. I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't believe in that. That's your thing. That's not mine. I just want to watch a football. Then it's easier to be like, okay, at a very core fundamental level of this relationship, we just do not have the same non-negotiables here, right? So I'm just simplifying it because I know people find it really difficult, because actually to leave someone is really difficult. Like I was a coward. I couldn't do it in my first relationship. I couldn't do it. So I know how hard it is. So sometimes the guidance is like, sometimes it needs to be simple, even though it's really complicated. I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I love the simplicity of even that story, which I have seen you tell online, and I love it because what she did is Liza your wife now?
Yeah. She stuck around. I haven't got wife 3 yet.
Well, I just didn't know the name of your wives and the second one, but what I love that Liza did that is so powerful is she didn't tell you how to do it. She just told you what needed to be done, and then she left it there with you, and she allowed you to either initiate something or not. Right. And so it's tricky because yes, it's easy when we see somebody not initiating whatsoever. And then we want to scan and see. And it sounds like, you were in your process of this, right? And which can also be interesting because if you're kind of in this middle space of your own consciousness, that clearly there is some, inner child stuff that needs to be healed. And, you're even in the world kind of with your belief that I've done it. I've stopped drinking. I'm like, I'm good here, but not really evaluating whatever she might be experiencing. And so what I love is the simplicity of, I don't need to tell you how to do this or to do it at all. I just need to tell you what needs to be done. Here's my standard. And the boundary is really with herself. Here's my standard, and this is what I need. And then you either initiate or not. And even if that's a tumultuous road, I always want to look for that in people. It's like, okay, are you making effort? To me, if there's effort, genuine effort, even if it's not perfect, it's not going to be a straight line, that's for sure. But is that effort happening where you understand what I need here and you're initiating the process to move in that direction? And then, by the way, I'm just going to focus on myself. And if you want to come to me and ask me anything, if you want to understand, more specifically, then I'm not going to just keep pouring it into you. I'm not going to just keep reminding you or telling you, I need you to initiate, or why don't you listen to this, or why don't you do this? I'm just going to simply leave it with you in a way that you understand what I need. And either that matters to you or it doesn't. Either you're willing to evaluate that within yourself or you're not. And then I'm just going to observe. I'm going to sit back as neutrally as I possibly can, being married to somebody that deeply wants something to be different. But I'm going to sit back and I'm just going to observe, what do you do with that information? And, how you organize yourself around that. I always say a problem's not a problem is how you organize yourself around the problems. But so how you organize yourself around that is going to tell me everything I need to know. And I used to really, in all relationships, I think we are either kind of bred for loyalty around love. Like love is blind in a way. And I know I was certainly bred that way, right? My family system is deeply probably, fringing on enabling because of that pattern of there's definitely those dynamics of kind of over enmeshment and, we give this blind loyalty to somebody. But I've really come to evolve my understanding of what love is in all relationships, but particularly romantic ones. But it applies to all, that love is a choice. And so we have to become it's a conscious choice that we make every single day, not just one time at the beginning of a marriage, not just during our courtship, not just, in the easy times, but it really is, how am I worthy to be loved by you? Am I listening to what you need? Am I consciously becoming the character that you need me to be? And does that align with my own values, right? And vice versa. And so this is always an exchange that I think is happening on a daily basis. And love really, in my mind now, which was so hard, of course, because, as I've described, and I don't know what your relationship with this was, but I was like, I couldn't even conceive of not being married to the person that my parents have been married, their entire, I couldn't even fathom that possibility that this wouldn't work, or, so I ended up abandoning myself so much during that process of that relationship to try to force it to work. And when we really kind of, and again, if this resonates with any of your listeners, this love is a choice, which really means that I have to show up and be the essence and the presence and the, availability to the love that you want to receive, and vice versa. You need to do that for me, because we're consciously choosing to love each other every single day. And in that way, it's not so much, this kind of like unconditional love. I can still love you, but I may not choose to be in partnership with you if you're not rising to the kind of conscious love that I need. And so, which isn't, again, a pressure, but it is am I doing the work to consciously understand what you need in love at this time? And am I meeting you there? Even if I'm not that, am I willing to listen and entertain and understand who you are and what you need at this juncture? And is this evolution always happening? And I think it's so important for me, right, to approach love in this way now, because it would have just been blind. It's like, okay, I made this promise to you at this time when all of these variables and aspects of the relationship were different, and they've evolved and changed over time. And are we present to that, or are we not? And so for me, that's the type of partnership, right, I had to move into in a way that does make you detached from the outcome of anything. It's like, of course, I want this to work, but I understand that it takes a lot of investment and work and presence and attunement to you and you to me, so that we can continue to make this conscious choice over and over and over again.
Just goes to show relationships are so difficult, right? I mean, I think one of the kind of light bulbs for me, really, and it was really difficult. It was really difficult for it to sink in because I was a little boy. It's like, even when she says, I don't want to be with a boy anymore. The boy responds, right? The boy said, what do you mean I'm a boy? And the boy goes on the attack, right? You're just proving yourself that you're not a boy. And it's not until you have to, the biggest piece of work for me has been how can people have their experience of me and my experience be different, but meet it with curiosity versus meet it with defensiveness. And one of the things that Liza taught me was I was always trying to fix her, and I was trying to fix her problem, coming from some screwed up sense of love. And she just said one day we were screaming at each other, and she just said, "Why don't you just ask me what I want, or why don't you ask me what I need?" And that was really powerful for me, to be able to just not fix her and just go, "What do you need from me right now?" And she'd just be like, "Nothing," or a hug, or "I need you to leave," or "I need to leave." And, when you were saying earlier on about you had to take care of yourself, right? Like you had to take care of yourself. If I'm your partner and you have to take care of yourself, that can be very confronting to me. My boy could come out because it's like, oh my, all the shame that comes up because I must be doing something wrong if you need to take care of yourself. And and I guess that's what being a man is, right? Or being a woman, or being conscious, or being in your beautiful feminine or your self energy is, okay, my wife right now has got a lot of shit going on, and that doesn't mean anything about me, right? Like I need to just be there for her and be able to support her in any way I want. I mean, it could be about me if she says it is, but yeah.
Yeah, but don't assume, right? And it's so classic. I mean, I wish they taught this in elementary school, really, like drama triangle, because usually people who come into this space are, fixers, rescuers, helpers, whatever, but on the drama triangle, right? And so you're describing that. I definitely did it myself. And it's really stepping off of that. And it doesn't mean that the truth is when you can get off the drama triangle, and you are oriented to the world in such a way that you're a healer, right? It's like you want to make a difference, you want to help, but it's recognizing when I'm doing that for me and when I'm actually doing it, when I'm genuinely doing it in a way that would resonate or provide something for you, which of course you've learned how to do, and that's what you do for people now. I've had to learn how to do it in a healthy, constructive way because I did it in all the wrong ways before. I forced, again, myself in fixing all of these problems, right, which really weren't helpful whatsoever. And so it's really that invitation that, hey, I'm here, right? I want to provide this container, and here's how I'm organized in the world, right? My orientation to the world, my essence, I think it's in my blueprint that I want to help and I want to fix things, but there's a constructive and healthy productive way to do so. And there's a really, non-productive way to do so. And so understanding, and I love that, that struck you and that you were able to let that in, is really asking her, how would you like this? What would actually be useful for you now? Otherwise, we're just actually interfering and making things worse and amplifying the situation in all the ways. And we're doing it for ourselves, for our own selfish need, right? That we're getting something from. It's transactional versus the way that I can step back and really listen. Oh, okay, you need me to give you some space. I'm going to do that then. I'm going to listen. I'm going to trust that you know what you need more than I know what you need. And I'm going to listen to you. And that way it actually ends up being healing. And then if I've demonstrated and built a trust and a safety with us that I listen to you when you tell me what you need, and I do that once and then twice and then 1,000 times, now I am creating safety between us so that maybe I can have built the trust, right, and the safety so that I can influence or help in some ways, because I'm willing to not just assert my will on you, but listen to what you need in your own way and how I can be most consciously loving to you. It's like, what type of love do you need from me? Okay. And by the way, does that resonate? And am I willing and able to offer that? And, usually we are. Usually that in and of itself, this safety and trust is emotional safety. That so often, we don't kind of get into the liminal space of that to truly understand how important that is. And that is really the groundwork that allows us to launch into something deeper and much more meaningful, which, is what we're looking for.
Yeah, trust. The word trust comes up a lot. It's like, I know this is kind of like a metaphor actually, but it happens in real life. Is one thing that will really upset Liza. It does upset her is when I interrupt her. So if she's talking to me about a problem or an issue or whatever, and I'll interrupt her, and she'll get really angry. And I'm saying it's a metaphor, even though it's happening in reality, because it's a metaphor of not trusting. In a way, it's like, I'm not trusting that you've got this, so I'm going to interrupt and impart my beautiful wisdom and knowledge. I'm going to be the hero of the drama triangle and just treat you like a victim. And so, like, being me interrupting and me having to like discern is so interesting, because on a podcast with you, it's much easier for me to discern when you've finished without interrupting you, right? Like the natural pause. With Liza, I think because I'm so close to her and I'm unafraid to show her the worst of me, the beast in me and the madman in me, I tend to get triggered easier. So I'll interrupt more. And so my practice has been, okay, how can I treat my wife like my podcast guest, right? Like, because I just need to just listen.
Right.
And I've learned that if there's a really long, uncomfortable pause, she will say, I have finished. And then
Right.
I can talk. And for me, you cannot do that if you cannot calm your nervous. If you do not build a container enough, so your window of tolerance is like much bigger, so you're not getting triggered by stuff so much. Now you can hold that space and you can wait, and then you can talk. If your nervous system's all razzled, that's when you're going to interrupt. And so the trust gets eroded in the relationship, right? And then nobody wants to feel like they're lower than you in the relationship. So if you're interrupting them, if you're telling them that you have the answers and they don't, they're just gonna like they think they're married to your dad or your mum or something, right? So trust is important.
Yeah, I love that. And it's even simply like, it's so wonderful to break down and understand the inner workings of you and why you do it, right? That's super valuable for you to understand and for her to understand about you as well. But, and so whatever that is for you that goes into the, is it that you need to feel superior? Is it that you need to feel, but there's a transaction that's happening, that's not available because you're not entirely regulated in that moment. So that's really good awareness. But simply put, it's also just, I'm not listening to what you've told me you need. And so on a very basic, and so what would that feel like if I've explained something to you, if I've told you exactly what I need here, and then you keep asserting your will in this way. And of course, it's your own kind of dysregulation that causes that. But how I feel is not emotionally safe. How I feel is disrespected. How I feel is that you are telling me by doing that, that your needs matter more than mine. And I'm telling you explicitly what I need. And so just leaving it there, and how beautiful that you can kind of see yourself and separate and recognize, and not that it has to be perfect, but do you move through this, right, in such a way that she can see, again, have you initiated the process to give her the space, to almost give so much space that she says, okay, I'm done now, go ahead. And how beautiful. And you can just see yourself, and how do we tend to ourselves, right? If for some reason you're dysregulated, which happens to us all day, not all day, every day, all the time, we're all going to go in and out of those states. It's not perfection. It's not like we arrive somewhere and we've arrived, right? We are constantly, I saw kind of one of your stories, I think from this morning, today, just saying, hey, I woke up and here's how I'm feeling. I'm a little low. I'm a little sad. I'm experiencing, and it's just, as you know, it's like our job to tend to that. It's our job to take the space to be present with that, so that we can get ourselves regulated, so that we can show up in our relationships. And so I loved how you talked about that. Like, hey, I'm going to give myself time to feel what I'm feeling, and then nurture that so that I can show up in all the exchanges I'm in today, whether that's my work or with my wife or any of those things. I'm going to tend to myself, and that's my responsibility, so that I can really show up and be fully present, for all the people that I'm connecting with, right? Which is such a beautiful way. And that's exactly how it has to be, right? Like, we are responsible for our own regulation all the time. And sometimes we're challenged and dragged back in. Sometimes the container we're in is contaminated, right? And it's harder to do that. And, probably people who are dealing with a partner in addiction, or it's like, okay, the container is more contaminated. And so we have to fight harder to find those moments of regulation. Or we live and work together and we collaborate in such a way that I'm listening to what you need, and I'm able to do that for myself, and you're able to honor that I need the space to do that, and on and on. But yeah.
For me, there's a preparation element to it. So every day, the most important aspect of my day, every day, no matter what, even when I'm seeing you, Casey, it's always the walk with my wife. So every day we go for a walk. It's my duty, my responsibility to make sure that when I go on that walk, I'm not taking any shit with me. She's not walking with a boy. She's walking with a man. I'm there to be present for her, to listen to her, to have fun, to play. That is like really important to me. When I was the boy in this relationship and in my previous relationship, it was just all about me. Like I just want to, like, for people listening, just to give you some hope, you know what I mean? Say, like, I was in my 40s when I finally started to be like, oh, wow, this is the way that I'm behaving, and this is the impact it's having on other people. I never knew that. Like, I was just so locked up in my own little world that just not being present for someone is just like, if me and you in this conversation, if I'm just like that while you're talking, that's effectively what is happening when you're thinking about work, or you're thinking about your worries and stuff, and your wife or your kid wants your attention. So it's like, it's really important to prepare, I think, to be conscious and more self-aware.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious. I hear you say that it was a tumultuous journey, but I don't know your story. How did you ultimately transform from the boy to the man?
How did I transform? I would say I'm still in that process.
Mm-hmm.
I will be in this process until the day I die. I've come to terms with. I would say my relationship with Liza right now, and she would echo this, because we were talking about it this morning on our walk, is the best it's ever been. I think, to condense it into something teachable, there was a time when Liza said to me, you do everything too fast. She said, you eat your food too fast, you think too fast, you walk too fast, you talk too fast. And that thing you do in the bedroom, she said, I even did that too fast.
Mm,
And that one hurt me the more, if you're a man and someone's telling you you're like some little boy,
right.
and it that didn't work at the time because I defended myself. But over time of like doing my own work, I realized, using the hare and the tortoise analogy, is I'm the hare more than ever. So to use internal family systems framework, I'm below the line. I'm in parts energy, or I'm in my shadow, right? That's when I'm the hare. I'm just, so I've been practicing over the years to be more tortoise.
Mhm.
So how do I do that as a rational, logical bloke? I have alarms go off all the time on my
Mhm.
computer, on my phone, saying, "Hey Lee, where are you right now? Hey Lee, are you in the future? Are you in the past? Are you present? Hey Lee, what are you saying to yourself that you have to do or you have to be?
Mhm.
Um, are you below the line or you above? I have all these different alarms, and they just allow me throughout the day to just take a beat and just say, wow, like I'm worrying about this podcast I'm doing with Casey later on. Yeah,
Mhm.
my daughter's right there, wants to play with me. So all those little micro moments have allowed me to just slow down a little bit. And I think what's happened, the more I've slowed down, I would say the greater my window of tolerance of handling stuff. It's almost like, let's say, when I'm not as reactive. So if Liza says something that triggers me,
Mhm.
instead of going for it, I'm able, because I'm slower, I'm less hair, more tortoise. I'm able to go, oh, there's a part of me right now that's really triggered because she's telling me how to be a dad. And I know that she's only doing that because she's now in a pattern and that she just feels unsafe around me parenting. So right now I just need to take a beat. I don't have to do anything. I just need to take a beat and calm down and just chill. And
Yeah.
usually everything just resolves itself. And
Yeah.
the more tortoise like I am and have been, the more and more the marble, Brenny Brown's marble jar of trust. So my
Mhm.
jar right now is full of marbles. So
Mhm.
I can actually screw up quite a lot now in my relationship because that marble jar is pretty full. And
Yeah.
she knows I'll always go back and put it right. Like I would say effective repair of rupture has been my number one thing, and taking
Yeah.
responsibility. So I
Yeah.
would say those are the key things. Yeah.
I love it. Brilliant. It's yeah, congratulations, right? In being, yes, we are never arrived. We're always in the practice of just getting better
Yeah.
and better and attuning to that. But it's so interesting because really what it's telling you, not that you don't know this, but as I'm listening to you, is that your urgency, we have, our nervous system is on a spectrum, right? And you kind of went into this urgency or hypermobilized energy, which feels unsafe to her. And so to understand that fact that her nervous system, right, needs you to slow down and be more present. And that's the emotional safety. And so often, again, this can be so nuanced and people don't really get into, they don't understand because on the surface, you think you're doing all the things right, or I stopped doing this, or I'm doing this. But really understanding that emotionally, right, when you're in this hyper mobilized state, which is again your little boy, and it would be interesting, I mean, I love getting to know people deeply and their energy, but it's interesting to know what in your little boy had you hyper mobilized, like what unmet need is seeking that hyper mobilized energy, right? But I'm offering this, not to pry into your own life, but really to give people an example of how do you come to understand yourself, even if you're just starting on your own without a container, although it's always great to have a container. It's really understanding what unmet need in your little boy that she's perceiving is hypermobilized. And what was it that you're seeking urgently? Right. And so asking, and all of that wisdom, because it's really good for her to have that awareness as well. It's beautiful that you've clearly, and I'm sure she's done this, but um, you've attuned so beautifully to her system, and how then can she help to heal the little boy in you by attuning to yours and understanding what unmet need has you so urgent, what unmet need has you moving so fast, trying to resolve it. And so then now we're talking about a relationship where each of us is not only this emotional intelligence that happens where I'm present to my own awareness, but I'm also sharing that with you and vice versa, right? I want to be present to what your woundedness is and what you need from me. And so then we're consciously coupling in this way that's allowing us to have this beautiful, healed relationship, right? That it's not that it's going to be perfect all the time, right? But it is really the key is do we repair well? Do we sit when we do get out of touch or we get out of regulation in some way? Have we committed and devoted ourselves to the repair in such a way that it allows us to have a real conscious partnership moving forward? Yeah.
Yeah. I think I've taken the lead on the repair for sure. I think it's something that Liza struggled with for a long time. And I would say I'm the bastion for our relationship and she's the bastion for parenting. That's kind of like how we divvy up the work. It's like I'll take care of our relationship, you take care of our daughter, right? Like, because that's what you love doing and that's what you're deeply into, and I'm deeply into relationship stuff. And in our relationship, it just works, right? It just works.
What you're describing, I love that, because what you're describing is such a healthy masculine container. It's like when you provide a container for her to amplify the thing that she loves the most. And that is the energetics of masculine, feminine energy,
we would be masculine all the time. And we work really well when Liza's in her free flowing feminine. I'm in my healthy masculine. We work really well. And if she slips into a masculine, the biggest challenge for me is me going into my feminine and not meeting her in masculine. That's like the real key. It's like that's when we really set off. Anyway, I could talk for hours, but I have actually got to run because I got to go to the doctor's. He's going to see me at 5:10. So
wonderful.
I got to lucky it's only across the road, so I got to run. But how can people find you, Casey, and how could they work with you? I'm going to put some in the show notes, but if you could just tell them, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so you can find me on Instagram or my website, which is Shrink Bigger. Or Casey Stevens, you can probably find it there. And there's lots of free resources. And I love doing things like this so that people can find you as well. And just free access to resources, which is so worthy and wonderful that you do this work and broadcast it in a way that people can, have information and initiate their healing. So beautiful. Yeah. All of that's on my website.
Awesome stuff. We'll have to do a part 2. All right. Casey, thank you very much for being a guest. You've been awesome. Love the conversation. Much love to you. Okay.
You as well. Thanks, Lee.